So for our keynote speaker, Brian Eden, who did come in from the west coast of the US, which on Destinus would have taken you, what, 15 minutes? Something like that, about the time it took you to take a cab?
I'm excited to hear about that. Go home for the weekend. Yeah.
So maybe just 3 things about Brian, little-known facts, actually. Obviously, he is the Vice President of Global Life Sciences of Technical Operations at Capgemini. He is responsible in leading process and digital solutions for supply chain, manufacturing, and quality, and obviously looking at sustainability. But 3 known facts: he is a veteran US Navy officer, certified nuclear engineer, and a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, master belt.
That's right.
So,
Okay.
without further ado, Brian.
Thanks, Christine. I appreciate it. So what your organizers didn't tell you is that they put the engineer before coffee. So I'm standing between you and coffee. I wanted to put something out there that I picked up from Skylar's presentation earlier. So if I made a list of all the words that I thought I'd hear today in Switzerland, Heidi would be the last one of those. I did not expect to hear this word. And I have to share with you, anybody ever get in front of the TV when your dad or your mom was watching sports when you were a kid? And you got in the way, intense match, and you got in the way? Okay. 1968, Oakland Raiders are playing the New York Jets. Okay, it's American football. You got to stick with me. Add your own team. Okay, Oakland Raiders are playing the New York Jets. The Jets are away. My dad was the biggest Jets fan ever. Okay, 2 minutes left in the game. Does anybody know what happened? It's known as the Heidi game because the East Coast coverage cut with 2 minutes to go in this tense, nobody knew it was going to happen game, and they cut away to the movie Heidi. So there is a certain generation of us in America, that's what we think about. Okay, when I think about Switzerland, I think about pharma and high tech because that's why I come here all the time. I use it as a base of operations when I come to Europe. So here I am, and it's fantastic to be with all of you. Hey, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Smart Factory, but at first I want to talk a little bit about industry. Do we have people from life sciences industry? Yeah? Okay. So life sciences, what I mean by that is pharmaceutical and med tech mostly. So either medical devices or pharmaceuticals. If you put them together, that's called a combination product, so you know. A couple of the trends going on in our industry, and actually a group of us were talking about this at lunch, is expansion. We're growing, and isn't that great? And in particular, we're growing in what are called large molecules. So these are therapies that are made out of CH, O, and N. So there's a linkage to hydrogen from before, by the way. But this is inorganic chemistry stuff, and it leads to really breakthrough therapies in oncology and vaccines and all kinds of different technology. And they're more and more in demand. Great, okay, great for us. But it produces a problem on the manufacturing side because you have to make more of it, so you have to expand. So for the first time in my professional career, we're seeing greenfield, in other words, new site expansions in places like North America and in Switzerland and in other places where you would think it would be too high cost to do that. Previously, because of tax advantages and costs, you would have seen that only in places like India, in Puerto Rico, in Ireland, places like that, okay? So a few of the challenges that are going on in the industry, but what I like to think about it as maybe glass half empty and then glass half full. So if those are some of the challenges, what are some of the exciting things that we can do in the industry? And I'm proud to do things like providing life-saving vaccines to patients. Now, I don't make the vaccines myself. I like to think that I help the people that make them, but nonetheless. Enhancing reliability of production, and you're thinking, oh, that sounds very boring, reliability engineering, all that. But if the lines stop, guess what stops coming out of the plant? The product that you need to cure cancer or to cure your ailing cold or whatever it is that you're needing on that particular day. Eliminating defects. So pharma companies are highly regulated, and we really get ourselves in trouble or tell on each other, whatever, when something goes wrong. And so making sure we eliminate defects at root cause is really important. And then finally, improving the flow altogether. So what is a factory, right? Raw materials come in one side, bunch of stuff happens, finished product comes out the other side. Anything that we can do to make that flow nice and smooth and easy is going to be more efficient and better for you as a consumer or taker of that therapy. Sound good so far? See, the engineer's not doing too bad before coffee. All right. So I want to talk about how we impact KPIs, so key performance indicators. You see a few of them up there. One of them I'll draw your attention to is called right first time. If you remember, I talked about being regulated. So no company wants to produce something and have to throw it out. That's called scrap. That's no good. Okay. But in a pharma company, if you do that, not only do you have to throw it out, but then you have to write a report about it. You have to figure out what happened. You have to talk to the MHRA or the FDA or something like that when it happens. So we don't like that. And you can see more of the traditional metrics are up there as well. What I'm coming to is an approach that we use called Smart Factory and more broadly called Intelligent Production System. And one of the ways that we make that happen is through use cases. And it's one of those many phrases in the digital lexicon, if you will, now, that means a lot, and then it means everything, and then it means nothing. So my definition of use case, something that you do that induces a change in the way you operate, maybe enabled by technology, to produce a change in the top-level metrics. And so think about it like cause and effect. Any of those things you see on the bottom, when implemented correctly, could drive the behavior on the top. And I'll just pick one example there where it says enhanced worker. We have a really cool project where we're equipping workers with technology spread through a large area of a plant so that we can know where they are, so that we know that they're not entering areas that aren't safe. So kind of a cool example of using technology to help the worker. And what does that also help with? If you're in the right place at the right time as a worker, probably whatever you're doing won't stop, and then you get that end-to-end flow. You see how that works? Okay, bunch of use cases that are on the bottom there that you could take a look at. So this is the framework, and I actually, this came to me in a vision I was running. It's actually a true story. I was running. This came to me in a vision. What you see across the top are the metrics that I showed you before, but also 4 key things that have actually become, for us at Capgemini, offers that we partner with our clients to implement. And I'll just walk through quickly what those are and then some of the enablers. The offers from the left to right, digital continuity. That's creating a digital thread or signal that goes all the way from research and development through to production. So think about that great hydrogen plane. I still want to get on that. Maybe not first, though. Maybe I'll go second onto the plane. Okay, but think about that plane. When it's coming out of research and development, there are all kinds of specifications, sizes and tolerances and wiring routes and all that stuff. If there's a digital signal of that, when it comes into production, if there's any kind of problem on the line or stoppage or anything, I can go back and retrieve very easily the information. I can work with suppliers. I'm sure a lot of us are in the business of optimizing supplier footprint and spend and all that. Tons of things I can do if I create that digital signal. The second thing you see up there is Smart Factory. And I talked about a factory, right? Stuff comes in, things happen, stuff comes out, right? So that factory, smart, means 3 things. It means, first of all, the data are connected. So that's also connected to the idea of digital continuity that I talked about. So the data from the machines, from the people, everything's connected together. Once I have that data connected, I can do numbers 2 and 3. 2 is visualize what's happening. Wouldn't it be great if you can sit in your office and know if the lines are on or not? Well, you can do that now, okay? So there's a lot of visualization that goes on, particularly if you think about pharmaceutical production. There's certain areas that we don't go into unless we're all fully gowned up, depending on what's happening, if it's a medical device or pharmaceutical product being made. So it's really, really important to understand what's happening visually. But the third and the most exciting is analytical work. And this can range from the typical multi-factor design. You're all thinking, yeah, I remember those from statistics. Okay, but making that multi-factor design really easy by allowing the data collection to be easy, running all the stats and everything, telling me what I need to know. Even more exciting, think about proactive measures. So now, just like in your car, it tells you when it needs an oil change. Most of them do. If yours doesn't, the new ones do. If it tells you need an oil change, wouldn't it be great if the pumps and the valves and everything in the plant told you before they stopped working? Or even, it's going to tell you if it doesn't need an oil change. Isn't that nice? Isn't it great that oil changes are going like many, many more kilometers nowadays? Okay, so that's the idea. So think about QA and QC. That stands for quality assurance and quality control. That's the third block that's up there. Pharmaceutical plants have a particular focus on that. So what that really is like Smart Factory for the labs. So if you're familiar with our industry, we have laboratories that do testing and release and research, both on the research and development side and in production itself. So that's kind of, think about what I just said, applied to the laboratory. The fourth thing you see up there is intelligent supply chain. And supply chains are the organizations that have that overarching mission of plan, source, make, and deliver. In that model, Smart Factory is the make part of that, but to go with it, we have all of that other intel and analytics available for plan, source, and then also deliver, okay? Just drawing your attention to the bottom there are 4 things I have on there that are enablers of this whole thing. And that's where I actually started, where I had this vision. I know I'm overplaying it, but I had this vision of this slide. Data and architecture. So all of what I said are interesting, but if you don't actually have the data systems to connect, it's not going to do anything. And what we see as a huge part of our work includes doing installation and harmonization of manufacturing execution systems, helping people migrate systems to the cloud, all of that IT work. And Capgemini has a huge heritage of that, and thank goodness, because that's not my end of it. Okay, so partnership is everything. The second thing is lean and quality by design. So Christine mentioned my experiences in lean. So all of this is based on a foundation of improving by removing waste, making flow nice and smooth, and then honoring the talent that we have in there. And I'll talk about that just a little on the next square where it says people and culture, okay? Quality by design, if you're familiar with the formation or the formulation of design for Six Sigma, that was used for probably 20 years ago, 30 years ago it started, and now that applied to pharmaceutical production, that's quality by design, basically. Okay. In people and culture, it's incredibly important in these journeys, and that's what a journey toward a more digital plant would be. It's important in those journeys for everyone to take the journey with you. Now, in point of fact, if you're a change management geek, you would know this. Some people don't take the journey. They choose not to. They're not capable of doing that. We need to be honest and transparent about that. But for those that do take the journey, we need to partner with them, involve them in the solution, make sure that they know that it's being well sponsored so that the people that are making the decisions at the top are officially endorsing this, and then having communication all the way through. Most importantly, in people and culture, when you liberate people's time, you need to find the right way to invest that. Now, it might truly be in downsizing a company. It might be in reinvesting that into R&D, finding another area for that talent to be best applied. And then finally, sustainability. I had the pleasure of representing my firm a couple of weeks ago at World Economic Forum in New York, and then since I happen to be in Switzerland these couple of weeks, I'm going to be at their facilities in Geneva tomorrow. The reason that I do that is, number one, we have an initiative where we're partnering on net zero strategy for CXOs on that, but also I want to make sure that sustainability thinking and mindset is infused in everything that we do. So I put that there specifically on the bottom of the slide. Okay. Doing okay? My wife likes to joke I have no problem with volume. Okay. Also, I can tell you that in my bag when I go home, I'm not going to bring a bunch of high tech. I'm probably going to bring chocolate. Don't tell Skylar though if he's still here. I don't want to have a problem at the coffee break. Okay. I want to give you 4 examples and then land on one page. Is that okay? Excellent. Okay. So this is an example of Smart Factory. As I was talking about, these manufacturing execution systems tend to be a really big deal, right? That's the digital record of what's happening in the plants, all the instructions, all the stuff that happens within that make cycle. It's all documented in this thing called an electronic batch record. This is a massive project we did for a biotech and vaccines company to enable that. And in doing so, it enabled a whole bunch of standardization, which makes the flow easier. Remember that lean manufacturing thing, better flow? So it helps to enable that as well. So that's one example. In the area of digital QA and QC, we partnered with a different kind of biotech company, worldwide pharma company, to do an assessment of their lean QC and digital activities. QC is quality control, to essentially think about how to run the laboratory like we run a factory. You may or may not be surprised. If you've worked in a laboratory, you wouldn't be surprised. But laboratories tend to be inhabited by people that are more highly educated than a manufacturing plant would be, and more scientific, more tinkerers, okay? Tinkerers are great, but when you're in manufacturing, that's not exactly what you're looking to do. So the things that can be standardized and flow through a quality plant more efficiently, that's what we were focusing on that particular project. Got 2 more. Okay, comprehensive program on the supply chain front, and this was for another, I want to say worldwide pharma. They actually make everything, so if you're with that company in the audience, you probably know who I'm talking about. So this was a comprehensive planning and supplier services program. So as I mentioned, supply chain on the beginning, remember that plan, source, make, deliver thing? On the planning side, we have to figure out what we're going to make, how many, who we're going to buy the stuff from and everything. And if we can enable that digitally, we can make that activity more efficient. But the other cool thing about planning optimization and supply chain is if I get the right amount of stuff, not too much and not too little, then I don't throw stuff out later. Hesitate to think, maybe you're all thinking about your refrigerators. I just thought of mine. If you make too much, then you're going to throw it out later. And if you don't make enough, which as an Irish kid from Connecticut growing up, that was more often the case. We didn't have enough, I'm just saying. Then people are going to go hungry. So you want to have that exact right balance, okay? 4th and last example I want to show you here. This is a medical technology company, so they make medical devices. And that acronym that you see there, PLM, Product Lifecycle Management, is a technique we use to create that digital signal all the way from design through to production. So that's an example of one of those, okay? I want to wrap it by emphasizing the people, and this seems a strange chart to do that because you're saying, what people what? But there's little people there, you see them? They're on the shop floor. And I'll tell you one more story, too. So I was on an assignment. I was head of Mylan's Operational Excellence program, so I was leading this thing worldwide. And I had contracted with a consulting firm to help me out. It's called Breakthrough Management Technologies. And this sensei, shall remain nameless, but when I say sensei, now get in your head Karate Kid. Are you okay with that? Remember Karate Kid? All right, so think about sensei. This guy was fantastic. We go to the plant, and what does he do? He doesn't draw the circle. This is sort of classic lean manufacturing. But we go into the plant, and he's like, Brian-san, be quiet and listen. And that's what we did. For almost the whole day at this plant outside Tokyo, we stood and we watched and we listened. And I learned so much by not doing this one and by listening. And the people we were listening to are the shop floor workers. So why I share that story, there's a little bit of a funny bit too, but why I share that story is that this is where it all happens. If you work in manufacturing and you're not here, not on the slide, I mean in your manufacturing plant, you're doing something wrong. One of the pitfalls in these digital transformations is that we create a lot of stuff we can see on the screen, but we forget that's where the manufacturing happens. If something's inefficient, that's where it's going to happen, so you want to go to the Gemba. And I'll just close it with, on the way home, so remote places outside of Tokyo, very far by car. We're riding home like an hour and a half back to the hotel. And I'm talking to Sensei, and he looked exactly like Mr. Miyagi. I don't make this up. I don't have a picture to prove it, but he's next to me. He fell asleep on my shoulder. So about, 85, it's hard to estimate. I didn't check his birth certificate or anything. Falls asleep on my shoulder. And what do you do when you have a sensei falling asleep on your shoulder? You just stay very still and you go through the rest of the ride and everything. So it was a pleasure to talk to you. It's a pleasure to represent Capgemini. I thank the sponsors of the program and Christine for the kind introduction. I'll be around at the coffee break if you want to chat. Thank you.